today's lesson is all about persuasive writing, how to write the introduction. As always, today's word of the day, just to expand one's vocab, is gusto. So to do something with enthusiasm and enjoyment. So John tucked into his dinner with gusto. And today's spelling word is exhilarate. So I'm going to put a note of all the spelling words on the Aim Higher Facebook page, and we're going to do a little spelling bee next week. Excited! Right, as always, cheesy pun of the day. How did the farmer find his wife? He tracked her down. Tractor. Sorry. Right, the introduction. So the introduction of a persuasive essay has two main functions. The first one is to hook the reader's attention. So you want to make me want to carry on reading by the end of it. So it has to be something quite exciting and dramatic. And the next one is obviously the introduction is just a summary of what you're going to be looking at. And you need to emphasise why it's important to you and, you know, why we need to be persuaded or convinced of something. Your point of view should be obvious in one of these essays from the very beginning, and that can include the title. I'm going to do another essay, another lesson on that next week. So even from the title, I should know what side of the argument you're on. Think about the RUI passages that you read. You know, so there's a newspaper article that you read for the RUI, and in that, from the beginning, from the title, it's pretty obvious what view they take. So that's exactly what you should do. So I should be able to say, right everyone, there's XYZ's essay. I don't know why your name's XYZ, but annotate it. What view is it? Let's look at techniques, that sort of stuff. So here's a little introduction that I scribbled together. Hey you! Yes, you! You probably don't know how bad it is to use disposable bottles. Plastic bottles are awful. Well, you're in luck because I'm going to explain why they are so bad. Then we'll describe all the reasons why you should use reusable bottles instead. So firstly, what do you think of that introduction? I can't hear you. Yeah, so there's obviously, you can have a wee look yourself and pause it and have a look. But there's positives in it, because we should always look for positives in life, you know, first, and then rip it apart and see why it's bad. Just kidding. So the first thing I would say is the positives are that they've tried to bring the reader in immediately, so there's a reference to you, and then the writer's view is pretty much clear in the introduction, so that they're obviously against plastic bottles and they're trying to get you to use reusable ones. But it's not written the best, is it? It's not very stylish, as we say. So it says things like, I am going to blah 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 blah, and then I will then blah 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 blah. I mean, you wouldn't open a newspaper article and expect it to say, in this article I am going to start to talk to you in a wee minute about, you know, and then you would just start reading about it, wouldn't you? So I always say, don't ever say, in this essay. The word essay should never be in any essay. Or I will. Some teachers say that using personal pronouns like I and things is fine, and I suppose it depends on the context, but what we don't like is I will blah blah or I think, because your opinion should be portrayed through all the techniques that I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. We're not really told in that introduction either why the topic's important or what's controversial about it, why they've chosen it really. There's not much of a summary about why the bottles are so bad, plastic ones, you know, the disposable ones. And there's also a presumption made which is negative about the reader. So it's like, you probably don't know why. So that's kind of saying, you know, you're not that bright. And there's a presumption made and it's a negative one. So immediately I would be like, how dare you? You know, so don't ever say anything sort of that's just a presumptuous. That's presumptuous. You just have to back it up with facts. I always say as well, this essay is your chance to show what you're made of. So it's your X factor moment. So remember, you want to try and write as much as you can within the limit, but also it's your chance to show off what you can do. So even from that title, this essay should be rammed full of different techniques that hopefully you've been learning since primary, really. And I've mentioned the I believe, I think. That's not very sophisticated. You can use personal pronouns if it's within a technique or within a context of some sort, like where you're using word choice and things, but don't ever say, in my opinion, especially in the conclusion, because you want to still keep those techniques going. And your opinion will be embedded throughout by the techniques that you use, by the language, by rhetorical questions, all these sorts of things. Right, so an introduction. I love the number 3. 3 is the magic number. So an introduction should include, and I've mentioned this already, a hook. So that's something that will grab my attention, maybe in the first sentence. So that's something we get an idea immediately, put as an idea in our mind. So it could be something shocking, or a shocking statement, or a shocking fact. Or some kind of concrete image, a metaphor or something that we immediately get a glimpse of in our minds. Or it could be something vague and a wee bit mysterious, so you don't know what the topic is until you keep reading on into the introduction. That can be quite an effective technique too. Commands are great. So again, I'll do another lesson on different techniques later, but a command is obviously where you tell somebody to do something, so they're used a lot in politics and in advertising, like, imagine you're eating this bar of chocolate. Nice. So you can say that to the reader. So you could open with, just imagine if, that kind of thing. Right, so that's the first one, a hook. The second one is what we call a concession statement. So where basically you would maybe show or explain what the overall consensus is, what is the general opinion in society, or possibly what you think the reader might feel or might believe. So although this is a persuasive essay, I would always say that it's important throughout at points to describe the other point of view, because you want to show that you've considered that. It's not all one-sided in a debate. I'm not saying it's a discursive essay, but at times you must include the other opinion, but then immediately you're saying, this is why that's not the case. Alright? So number 3 this is the sort of main bit. This is where you're going to sum up the main points that you're going to say in the essay. So if you're doing it, for example, about the negatives of energy drinks, say, we talked about this last week, then you might say, it's physically bad for your health because blah, 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 and it can affect concentration, da, da, da. So it's just a sort of summary of 2 or 3 of the main things, but again, done quite sophisticatedly where you're using some techniques. So it's just a sort of summary of the arguments that you're going to then look at in the main body. And it should also be clear to the reader why you feel that way. So we need to be convinced that there is a problem here and that you've got some solutions to that problem by the end. And obviously this is the majority of your introduction. As I've said, you must use techniques throughout. And obviously if you're doing National 5, you need to use techniques, but especially more at higher, you need to be able to start using a variety of different techniques. So this is something that a few English teachers used, where you say, I want you to include the forest, or even just forest sometimes. Alright, so I'm going to go over what those are just now. D is direct address, so that's immediately bringing the reader in. So you would say something like you, so I said already about commands, or our, or we need to fix blah blah. So where you're speaking directly to the audience or the reader. A is alliteration, that's my favourite. So that's where obviously different word sounds, you're making a different sound, harsh, soft, whatever. So if you're quite annoyed at something, you might use harsh letters. I'll do another lesson on this later. So it's where obviously you have words that start with the same letter, 2 or 3 different words within a sentence. And it can be a good technique to use for a title as well. Fact, so this is the F. So obviously you need to give me proven facts, statements that are true. That's where obviously your research comes in. O is opinion. So that's maybe something that you would put in to say, you know, this is what, well, you wouldn't say I believe, but obviously that's where you're sort of giving your opinion about something that's maybe not been totally proven, but that's just implied from what you've read. R is a couple of things, repetition. So obviously that's where you repeat things. Obviously that's where you repeat things. Obviously that's where you get the idea. Or rhetorical questions. So obviously they're ones that don't need an answer. So they're very effective. You could use them 3 or 4 times in the essay. So that's obviously to make us think about something or to try and persuade us to agree. It depends on the sort of stance. Repetition is used to emphasise a particular word or idea, to emphasise it. E is emotive language, so that's your really strong emotional word choice or exaggeration you could use as well for E. So obviously you put words in there that are a wee bit dramatic and over the top, but it's really, really good to use a variety of word choice throughout. And we want sophisticated language more, so you need to get the thesaurus out but use it properly, as I talked about last week. S is statistics. So obviously it's a little bit different from facts. Facts are maybe, you know, solid things that I've read. Statistics are your numbers, your percentages, your dates, your figures. So anything that can back up what you're arguing or to exaggerate, you know, your point. So X amount of bottles are recycled or something like that. And the last one is 3. I just usually call it a run of 3. So that's where there's 3 things perhaps in a list, or you use 3 different things to prove a point. So it's just quite a nice solid number there. Right, so let's have a wee look at another introduction now. So this is the first half. I tried to split it into 2 because it's so long. Annually, 8 million tonnes of plastic sneaks into our sacred seas, the equivalent of 1 billion elephants. Impossible to imagine. The invention of plastic revolutionised the manufacturing industry. Colourful, long-lasting and inexpensive, it is used in electronics and even vehicle manufacturing. Plastic protects our food and medicine from contamination, so can ultimately improve our lives. However, it is also destroying us. Dum dum dum. Next half. It can take hundreds of years for just one plastic bottle to decompose. So just imagine the scale of the problem, considering approximately 1 million bottles are purchased globally every minute of every day. Our addiction to plastic means it has become a necessity in our lives. Can we really move on and break up this toxic relationship we have with plastic? Governments around the globe must take immediate drastic action to tackle this environmental catastrophe. Right, so that is obviously way better and much more in depth and full of techniques compared to that other one we just looked at. This looks a little bit colourful, I know, but I will be putting these on the web page on the Aim Higher Facebook group so you can get a bit of a closer look at them. So there's loads of techniques in there, so I've just highlighted some. So obviously 8 million tonnes statistic sneaks into our sacred seas. So we've got personification there of sneaks, then we've got the alliteration or sibilance of sacred seas, sneaks. Impossible to imagine. So again, there's a short sentence for impact, but it's also emotive because like exaggerated, impossible. Revolutionised the manufacturing industry, so that's a fact. Colourful, long lasting and inexpensive, so that's your run of 3. It protects our food and medicine, so again there's lots of direct addresses going on in here. Our, us. So it's just to get the reader on board to agree with you. And it's also destroying us. So there we've got that opinion, but also strong emotive language there. And there's a sort of contrast, a little twist. The second half of the intro, again, we've got another fact that takes hundreds of years for one bottle to decompose. Just imagine. So again, addressing the reader, a command to get us to believe or picture it. Our addiction to plastic, so again we've emphasised the addiction aspect, so again it's like used metaphorically, necessity in our lives, so again we could live without it probably, it's just that obviously it's just exaggerated how much we rely on it. Can we move on and break up this toxic relationship we have with plastic? So we've got a rhetorical question to make us think, can we live without it? I don't know. And toxic relationship, obviously we've got the word choice of toxic, metaphorical relationship there being destructive, that idea. And then environmental catastrophe, obviously they've used the word choice again to make it sound like it's a total disaster. Alright, so that is obviously way better than that first one. So this is just to show you, obviously there's maybe more techniques in there than you would use, but you need to try and use as much of deforest as you can. Yes? So just try and remember that. And again, I'll print out a wee sheet that's got them all on it so you can see for yourself. The introduction as well, just one more thing, is roughly between 120 to 150 words at the most. I would say try and stick to sort of around the 120 words mark, and that should be plenty. If it's way less than that, then you've probably not included as much stuff as you should have. Okay? So I hope now you're more confident in writing an introduction. Again, I'll try and post a couple of introductions that are really good on the sources and resources, and I'll put in DeForest a wee bit more work on worksheets and stuff on that. Tomorrow, if you'd like to tune in, voila, then we're going to look at how do you structure the main body. So we've done how to do the research, proper ways of research, and how to do your plan. And then we've done how to do the intro. So tomorrow will be how do we structure the main body paragraphs. And then, obviously, next week we'll do the conclusion. So that should be hopefully everything you need to get going with this folio piece. Alright, so I hope you can tune in tomorrow. If you haven't, please join and subscribe to my Aim Higher YouTube channel, but also join the Facebook page and click groups, join the group, and then I'll upload all the PowerPoints and materials for you to help you on that as well. And if you don't have Facebook, there's the links for the Google Classroom, and again that's where all the materials and resources that I use are posted too. Remember, I'm doing these for free because I'm so nice. But if you would like to say thanks at any point, then just send me a wee £1 or £2 to that PayPal address there if you found them useful. But if not, have a lovely day, and I'll see you tomorrow for how to structure the main body. Good luck, happy writing.